What's good, party people? This is Liquid in the Woods, and that smiling face that you see is the handsome Adnan Kureishy, and we
Hey,
are back for part two. What's good, my man?
it was an unexpected part two. We were putting out too much quality content, and my internet couldn't handle it. And so we're back here with more quality content. According to Woods, your Woods. That's you. I guess on your there. There we go. That's him right there. Anyway,
It's
so yeah,
it's there. There we go.
yeah. It's
Anyway,
backwards. To me, I'm looking at you. It should be here, but no, I have to went here. It's
over
really
there, yeah.
confusing time about the time we live in because I did an interview on my show using Zoom, and it was the same kind of thing where I had to my hands are opposite to what I'm thinking.
So I wish we were left side brain. My goodness.
Yeah,
but
right. But no, you
we,
last we left off, you were sharing your story of Cody and being tripped out like Dusty's son and Dusty have both been NWA champ, and that's a really cool moment to have that realization of, right?
yeah, you know what? And it's funny because I actually had this NWA title. Them for him to sign, and I got to Ocean View Pavilion, and I forgot a Sharpie, and unfortunately, I didn't get it signed. But I've got Terry Funk, Roddy Piper, Harley Race, Shane Douglas, and Raven. So there's that.
You should have hit me up. I think I might have had a Sharpie on me. I feel like I have a Sharpie in my bag usually, but who knows? Like next
I
time.
should have. Damn it! Because not only is he dashing, but he's also all bit prepared. So damn it!
Well,
Hindsight 2020.
that's why I started because my Twitter account is way older than my wrestling career. That's why my Twitter is at the Dashing Adnan, is because like it was when Cody was going through his Dashing Cody Rhodes phase. So that's what I did at the Dashing Adnan at the time, and then I just had it stick, and so that's why it's also at the Dashing Adnan on Instagram. Also follow me on both platforms, by the way. That was also too why if I was to ever if I was like ever a wrestling interviewer, I just wanted to interview Chris Bay for the aspect of it just saying on both our Twitter handles on the bottom saying Dashing Chris Bay, the Dashing Adnan. I just thought that would be pretty funny too.
I love it. It's a double marketing ploy. There's some cool merch that could be done. I mean, come on. I own a Bucks of Jericho T-shirt because there's a melding of the Walls of Jericho and the Young Bucks.
Yeah,
So you just never know.
yeah, that's a pretty good shirt. That's one where like the Bucks are behind him doing the thing, and then Jericho's like sitting down on like a throne or something, right? I think.
And yep, absolutely. And even better, I picked it up on clearance for $7 at Hot Topic. So boom, I feel
Hot
good.
Topic clearance is a good way to get some certain shirts sometimes. Sometimes just in general. I always look in clearance. Totally off topic, like tangent to like what we were talking about. Like clearance is like one of the best things like in general because I remember I bought in some pretty good video games on clearance just because it's like oh okay, just no one bought this, and now it's like. I remember getting like a copy of like Darksiders for the 360 at clearance at like Sears for like a really cheap amount of money. I'm like, yeah, why not? Stuff like that.
Yeah, because they don't know what they got, man.
Oh, it's good for the consumer when you're looking out. Definitely. That's also how I actually got an NES Classic 2 on clearance from Target. It was way after everybody had the fervor for it, so I didn't care. But I just remember being at Target and they had it on clearance for like 42 as opposed to 60. I'm all like, well, I don't necessarily need an NES Classic, but for 42, I don't think I'm gonna pass on this. Like.
Yeah, and now that's like crazy because obviously you're an impresario in terms of your wrestling personality, but you're a huge video game head. What are your favorite wrestling video games?
Oh man, I mean, it's probably back in the day. I mean, we all talk about how great No Mercy was, right? As we went in the evolution of those particular kinds of games, friends of mine and I would spend a ton of time playing the GameCube wrestling games that came out because they used the same kind of engine also. So it was WrestleMania 19, WrestleMania 18, and WWE Day of Reckoning 1 and 2. And I think those games, I remember I played like Day of Reckoning 1 or 2, and those games still hold up in a lot of ways too, especially from like certain presentation aspects because Kane's entrance in that game in WWE Day of Reckoning 2 still looks perfect because there's a point where Kane looks photo real in that game from the GameCube. even today, because of just the way it was lit for this certain aspect of it. Like they did a really great job, like with those particular gameplay systems. Not that a lot of stuff that's come out hasn't been good. It's just I feel like those were like the pinnacle of really good wrestling games. And then even then when they used the AKI system later in a non-wrestling type of game like Def Jam Fight for New York, where you had all these rappers, but they were doing wrestling moves and stuff, that was also a good one. But I think I would probably go with like one of the Day of Reckonings is probably like one of my favorite.
Mine is, I mean, the standard bearer is WCW versus NWO. The world. I mean, I think it was Revenge.
There's
On
World Tour, and then there's Revenge. So it's Revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had World Tour on PlayStation, but the Revenge on N64. I bought a N64 for $30, like maybe 10 years ago on, again, clearance, because just to have that game. And my goodness, I mean, you've got Raven, there's so many people that are on that game. There's got to be about
insane in that game. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing.
You had like you had NWO, White and Black, and Wolfpack at the time. So you had Sting with the red face paint. You had Hollywood Hogan in there. You had Eddie. You had Ray. You had Hoovy. You had Psychosis. You had Lex Luger. You had so many, like just a who's who of talent really at that time. It's quite amazing.
Yeah, and a lot of people, again, obviously he who wins the fight, wins the spoils of the gold. And WWE definitely bought WCW and ECW respectively, but the amount of talent that has come out of WCW, that got greater fame in the WWE, it's incredible. I mean, we're going even back into the early '90s. When you're talking about, Dustin Rhodes, who's still doing his thing in AEW. He's, a product of WCW and the FCW, the original FCW territory. There's so many, people that, Crusher Khrushchev went over to become the third Demolition member.
Oh, right. Yeah. You Demolition Crush. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one that nobody talks about as much. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, there was just a litany of talent there. So I was always a big WCW guy. So, I love that game so much.
I think in transitioning, when we're talking about video games and wrestling, I think it's interesting to think about, in this time of pandemic and quarantine, one of the promotions I'm involved with, that wrestling, pro wrestling, one of the most fun promotions that exist, period. I think we put out a show that was done completely in a video game recently to make new content, which was called Wrestling Pro Wrestling's Virtual Boy, Do We Have a Show for You? So we presented some matches just with created characters as the Wrestling Pro Wrestling roster, and it's available to watch on the Wrestling Pro Wrestling Twitch and YouTube channel. So in case anyone wants to see it, to continue kind of like telling our stories a little bit, that was one of the things that we did, was we put out a show that was just done in, I think it was made in W2K19, because W2K20 had all the glitches and stuff, so we didn't use that. So, but yeah, we basically had a Wrestling Pro Wrestling show done in WB2K, which was pretty funny.
That's hilarious. I got to check that out, man. That's funny. Now, I'm glad that you mentioned Wrestling Pro Wrestling, because, is it widely known who the creator, the major domo of Wrestling Pro Wrestling is?
Yeah, it should be widely known, because at one point it used to be called Brian Kendrick Presents Wrestling Pro Wrestling or something like that.
Okay.
Brian Kendrick Pro Wrestling. Now it's just Wrestling Pro Wrestling, but no, it's pretty well known. Every time we do a show, Brian tweets about it anyway. So yeah, Brian Kendrick is the mastermind behind Wrestling Pro Wrestling. As far as the big guy who's in charge of it. But yeah, it's anyone who's never checked it out, please check it out. Like, Wrestling Pro Wrestling it's one of the most fun things I have done in the world of pro wrestling, and anytime I get the chance to be part of it. And that's another place too where I showed up, and then I was able to help out and then do some weird stuff, and it was just like I was just willing to do weird stuff on Wrestling Pro Wrestling. Like, for those who don't, like, one of our biggest heroes is Cereal Man, who's a dude who's basically like Hulk Hogan if he was made out of cereal and had a cereal box head, like a superhero, but fights she's the champion of breakfast, and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
And there's so many great hilarious things like giant kaiju, like we have Nessie Jr. and like Sam Squatch, who's the daughter of the Sasquatch, stuff like that. And there's a lot of really fun things that happen there. I have been known to put on a giant turkey suit from time to time there. Who knows? But yeah, it's the most ridiculous fun. And it's actually where I met you the first time, was in the lobby of one of the Wrestling Pro Wrestling shows. Actually, I remember that.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I mean, our friendship and our relationship is one of the great things that came out of that first introduction to Wrestling Pro Wrestling. But also, my goodness, what is it? Is it the Parm Horseman?
Oh, it is the Formage Horseman. Thank you, and which consists of Ricotta Flair, Parm Anderson, Gorgonzoli Anderson, and Tully Blanchetta. That is the Formage Horseman.
Yes, that to me, that and a depiction of Bill Cosby, played by the great urban juggernaut Sean Black.
Sean Black is Phil Cosby. That is indeed
yes,
correct.
Those were. I mean, to me, I was just like, this is hilarious, and I'm a huge Arn Anderson fan, much like Harley Race.
Yeah.
Listen to the podcast religiously, but the fact that he was done in like Parm Anderson, like I love Parmesan on my pizza, and Arn Anderson, I was just like, this is for me. And screw everybody else there in Burbank at the Elks Lodge. This iteration of character, that you're speaking to me.
That's the most fun thing about Wrestling Pro Wrestling, is that it's got so many weird, hilarious characters. And I think we have a nice mix now, too, of having our hilarious let's get weird moments, and also having, a handful of, like, really good wrestling matches that take place there, too. Because, like, Darwin Finch will kill it in a match with, like, Dark Sheik or something, and then we'll do something weird where Formage Horseman has this feud with a man called String, who's basically Sting, but he's made out of string cheese, and it's good. Or, like, so... I think it's got it. If you're into weird, wacky stuff in your Wrestling Pro Wrestling is absolutely something you should check out. But that doesn't mean that we don't have a couple of like great matches in our catalog too that are worth watching. Like I remember we have a really good, really old four-way that took place like a year ago. That was Darwin Finch, Big Nasty Watts, Kid Isaac, and Ring of Honor's Bateman now, and like that was a really good four-way match that took place on our weird Wrestling Pro Wrestling show, that just happened. So I think I've always tell people with Wrestling Pro Wrestling is it's the best wrestling promotion to watch if you've never watched wrestling before, or if it's your first show live. I think it's the best one for those two kinds of people in general, as far as like, coming out to the show,
I agree. It's you get to see all of you guys, their creativity just kind of go on weird, wacky trips. Some of the most creative things that the team known as Doomfly, Eli Everfly and Delilah Doom, they've done some of the most creative. I mean, in terms of character and story building, creative stuff in the confines of, well, not even the confines, but in the spectrum of Wrestling Pro Wrestling. And it's just amazing.
It's a great canvas for artists to paint, essentially, is what you could say. Like, honestly, I think it's also like, where like guys get to do like a different character that they aren't necessarily like out everywhere else. You know what I mean? Like certain guys may wrestle at Wrestling Pro. Like Sean Black is a great example of that. He's only Phil Cosby at Wrestling Pro Wrestling. You want to see like Urban Juggernaut, then you go see the stuff that he's doing at Amped Up Wrestling or wherever else that he may be. But if you want to see him do some hilarious like Phil Cosby impression, then yeah, for sure, come out to Wrestling Pro Wrestling whenever. I that's when I really miss, like, as far as like I miss all the places I've been. I just think though about like all the weird stuff that we do over there and how hilarious and great that stuff is, and that's one I can't wait to get back to when we're able to.
Yeah, I know that's kind of going to be the first kind of thing that happens, once this whole COVID situation is done with, and how do we get our kind of local identity back, right? Our local pro wrestling. I mean, there's been not so many. I mean, the LA scene was pretty prominent in terms of action and cards every week and everything like that. The COVID situation, there was a lot of negativity that happened over this like last 3 months. But like you said, the camaraderie and the ability to create, that is what we can take away from all of it, and that's what we would like to return.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if wrestling's strong enough that we'll get over this hump, I definitely feel like there's probably going to be a bit of a shrinkage, when we get back, just because just financially it doesn't make it's not going to work for a lot of promotions, over the time period of theirs, struggling with, and that's just unfortunately just the nature of just money, but I think that wrestling itself can recover as whenever we get a chance to move past this, and I look forward to being part of the rebuilding process in that when that does happen.
Yeah, I can't see why you wouldn't be, because again, what you've done in your career thus far, man, I can't wait to see what the handsome voice ends up doing, literally any and everywhere that you go.
That's the hope, man. I'm like, let's keep the train going. Let's get bigger, and let's go farther than ever before. It's always the goal. Like, if you shoot high, if you shoot for the moon, and you miss, and you're still amongst the stars. Like, that was another thing Joy Chaos taught us recently, was that. And then like some people, they shoot low and they hit, and then they kind of stick around there. So I've been trying not to stick around like in that low bar. I'm trying to get higher, man, and stuff like that. So I'm really looking forward to what's coming next for the handsome voice in my wrestling career, whether it is as a ring announcer, whether it is as a commentator, or anything else gets thrown at my way. I'm looking forward to jumping feet first, man.
No, man, and I can't wait to see where you land. But we're kind of in this kind of weird time. Everybody's in the house, right? And obviously, they're streaming.
My house? Okay, cool. It's dope.
Yeah, there's streaming services for wrestling. There's Steam and other iterations of video game, and I don't think there's been ever a time where you would basically go into your video game playage than right now. And Reuben Garcia says, "How's it going, gentlemen?" Reuben Garcia, how are you? We love you, man. You're awesome, and thank you for all of the crazy facts that you spit out on all your social media channels. Because I thought I was a student of the game. Adnan thought he was a student of the game, but the things that you spat out and the wrestling history that you have, my goodness, you're amazing.
Mr. Woods, we're all students. We're all, every day is an opportunity to learn and to keep learning. So don't stop learning.
Dang right. Now, what have you been doing to kind of pass the time? What video games, things that you've binge watched, things that you've streamed? What kind of speaks to the handsome voice?
I mean, lately, thankfully, New Japan has come back so I've watched all of the New Japan Cup. I still have to watch Dominion, which just aired last night. I know the stuff that happened with Dominion. I just have to watch it myself. Gaming wise, I got, if anyone followed me on social media knows, I got really hooked on the Outer Worlds, which was this awesome RPG that came out from Obsidian for the Xbox One and the PS4. Great RPG. I've been hooked on a lot of RPGs lately because I just also played Final Fantasy IX for the first time in life. People playing the Final Fantasy VII remake. I just played Final Fantasy IX for the first time in life, which just had its 20th anniversary this week, and I didn't know that was coming up, but I thought it was excellent, and it held my attention very much. And stuff like, I just picked up for my Switch Clubhouse games, which is just a simple, like a ton of little games that are awesome that I've been playing those. I think I played a good amount of Mario Maker 2, and just like everyone else when this quarantine started, Animal Crossing New Horizon. Everybody was playing Animal Crossing New Horizon when this quarantine hit because it was a substitute for everyday life. So I also was, for a while. I haven't played Animal Crossing now in a couple of weeks, so I think I've kind of like normalized off of it. But I was absolutely in the thick of it when this quarantine hit, of just using Animal Crossing as a substitute for everyday life. But I would say those would be like the main things that I was at least hooked on during this time. And then I was also catching up on some Dragon Ball stuff and some as far as like watching some old Dragon Ball, and then I've been rewatching an old seminal anime, if you ever heard of, called Cowboy Bebop, which I have it on Blu-ray now, and it's just fantastic to go back to Cowboy Bebop because that show and that series has absolutely stood the test of time. Even in 2020, just it's still cool and so jazzy, and I think it's fantastic.
Man, that's some really good recommendations, and especially things in that anime genre, the cartoon genre. They don't age. They really don't. You could watch them in a bubble, no matter where you are, and they still hold up.
It's really good. It's just we still aren't in space yet, so I'm waiting for that part to happen. But all the other stuff about it's just really cool if you're into like an action, almost noir kind of style of show. It's really cool. It's got a lot of really like cool jazz music behind as it plays too. I believe almost all the episodes are named after a song as well. So there's stuff like that too. Like like there's like Honky Tonk Woman and like what is it? There's so many like see this guy Reuben Garcia
Yeah,
knows how awesome Cowboy Bebop is. So it's
see,
like
Reuben Garcia, dude. And again, brother, I love you. You're awesome. You're awesome, and Adnan, you're awesome. But obviously, this kind of time is very weird, right? Everything is changing, whether it be the wrestling scene or the world at large, right? What kind of advice do you have for people that are struggling with what's going on, whether it be sickness, job loss, whatever? There's like crazy stuff going on everywhere. But what does the handsome voice have as their pearl of wisdom to anybody that's going through some hardship right now?
you are not alone. Right now, it's hitting so many more people, and I imagine like this whole situation can be considered a trauma, and it's not easy dealing with trauma, but just know that you aren't alone, and that other people are dealing with the same things, and that you're able, if you have those good people in your life, you can talk to those people, don't keep it bottled up, because anything that you keep bottled up is going to kind of like stick there, and it's going to get volatile eventually if you don't let it out. That's what I tell people is that like if you have stuff that's inside that you need to let out, just let it out, man. Just because, yeah, it's not good to keep it in there. But it's and also just keep your chin up and don't give up either, because things are going to be bad now. The old phrase is that it's always darkest before the dawn, and I think hopefully we'll be coming up on a new dawn soon, and that things will turn around for you and the people in your life as well. Just got to keep a positive head up and don't let all the bad stuff consume you on the inside.
Man, thank you. Thank you for being the calm hand of the storm. And again, that just shows why you're kind of the hired hand that to come on in to every promotion that you've worked for, because all the craziness that can go into running a show and production cues and making sure talent is okay and everything like that. And
Right.
there's Adnan making sure that everything goes smooth sailing. So thank you for all you do for the wrestling community.
Man, trust me. Yeah, it's a hectic world, but yeah, you just got to learn to roll with the punches.
Now, for people that haven't already followed the gospel of the handsome voice, for those who want to sit in the tree of knowledge, where can they find you on social media?
Funny you said gospel, and I was just thinking about how Christopher Daniels used to end his promos by like, and that's the gospel according to the fallen angel. But I'm no Chris Daniels. I hope to age as well as him, though. God damn, that man looks great at 50 years old. In any case, you can follow me on Twitter and on Instagram at the Dashing Adnan, TheDashingAdnan. That's how you can find me on the socials. You can also find my old YouTube channel. We put out some new content recently. I don't know when we'll put out some new ones. It's youtube.com/one4u show, ONE, the number 4, the letter U show. We recently did another interview with Victor Lucas, who people may remember from G4 back in the day as the host of The Electric Playground and Judgment Day, or known as Reviews on the Run in Canada. Still puts out a lot of great gaming content today, and we had a great discussion about quarantine and how it's affecting the games industry and all that, and just whatnot. So it's a great conversation. If you decide to go check it out, I think it's absolutely worth anyone's time. It's a lot of quality stuff there. But yeah, that's where you can follow me on social media. You can watch anything that I'm on, like at the Santino Brothers YouTube page, the Wrestling Pro Wrestling YouTube page, Fight TV for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, or Saturday nights at 1 a.m. on KDOC. Or you can watch Lions Break Collision every Friday in July. So 2 of them are out now, 2 of them coming out in July. So you can watch the first 2 on demand, catch the last 2 later on in July. That's Friday, 7 p.m. Pacific time on New Japan World, njpwworld.com. Subscribe there to get all the awesome New Japan content, including Lines Break Collision.
Yeah, and I'm through the first episode of Collision. In the whole Fight Island deal, I missed the second one, so I'm gonna run off to go watch the handsome voice do his thing for New Japan. But Adnan, thank you so much for joining us here, dude. We got to circle back. We can't do these 2-year breaks between us. Looks like he's frozen. But thank you guys for joining us. For the handsome voice, Adnan Kureishy, I'm According to Woods, and we are out.